Moses, Part 3. Saving the people of Moses from Pharaoh. With each sign from Allah, Musa hoped the Pharaoh would come to his sense and alter his course. Yet these signs only seemed to push Pharaoh further to subjugate and oppress the children of Israel. Musa remained steadfast, showing no indication of surrendering. He garnered more support among his people, and this drove Pharaoh to the point of uncontrollable anger. He convened a meeting with his chiefs, ministers, and other notables. He addressed the assembly, "Let me kill Musa, and let him call upon his Lord. I truly fear that he may change your traditions or cause mischief in the land." Most of those present readily favored the idea, except for one nobleman who, like Asya, was discreetly a believer. He reasoned, "Do you kill a person simply because he says, 'My Lord is Allah,' even though he brought to you clear signs from your Lord? If he is a liar, his lying will recoil upon him. But if he is truthful, you will be inflicted with some of the awful consequences of which he warns you." Allah does not guide to the right way any who exceeds the limits and is an utter liar. My people, today the kingdom is yours, and you are supreme in the land. But if Allah's chastisement were to come upon you, who will come to our help? The Pharaoh and his disciples were not happy listening to the man. They threatened to harm him, but he was unafraid, as he knew that Allah was on his side. The man also warned the Pharaoh and his chiefs that just as the nations of Noah, Ad, and Thamud, they too were inviting their doom by attempting to kill the messenger. This infuriated the Pharaoh further, who then threatened to kill the man. However, Allah protected his believer. Prophet Musa continued to demand that the Pharaoh release the Israelites and warned him of Allah's punishment if he didn't agree. But the Pharaoh paid no heed. And they said to Moses, "Whatever sign you might produce before us in order to enchant us, we're not going to believe you." One day, the Pharaoh called Egyptians and the Israelites to a large gathering. He reminded them it was he who was their Lord who provided them with their necessities. He showed them that Musa was a liar and an ordinary poor man who could not provide them with anything. To the masses, there was indeed a clear distinction between the Pharaoh, who seemed powerful and superior, and Musa, who was poor and lacking authority. Years of oppression had narrowed their vision, making it difficult for them to conceive a reality different from their present. They saw the disparity between Musa and the Pharaoh and quickly judged based on what the eyes could see, completely overlooking Musa's status as a messenger of Allah. However, the situation began to change as Allah began to send down his signs one by one. First, the river Nile, which supplied water to the crops in Egypt, began drying up. With the water levels depleting, the river banks remained dry, and the water supply to the crops was cut off. A severe famine ensued, yet the Pharaoh remained defiant. This drought was soon followed by a massive flood, further devastating the land. As the people were faced with adversity, they remembered Moses' warning of severe punishment if they rejected Allah. So they pleaded with him, "O Musa, pray to your Lord for us by virtue of the promise he has made to you. If you relieve us of the scourge, we will believe you and let the children of Israel go with you." So Prophet Musa intervened and invoked the Almighty to ease his punishment. The water withdrew from the land, becoming fertile and cultivable again. But they failed to fulfill their promise and returned to their old evil ways. Then Allah unleashed another sign, sending down a massive swarm of locusts which formed a dark cloud over the land, devouring all their crops. The people turned to Musa again, imploring him to intervene once more. But they failed to keep their word when the Lord eased his punishment. Confronted with yet another plague, the Egyptians found themselves battling an infestation of lice that spread various diseases across the land. Showing no shame, they rushed back to Musa, vowing to free the Israelites if relief was shown. But once again, they broke their promise once the scourge was lifted. True to their pattern, the Egyptians reacted predictably when the next sign came down. This time Allah sent an army of frogs by the millions. They hopped everywhere, in the rivers, roads, and even making their way into their homes and beds. When Prophet Musa and the Israelites drew water from the Nile, it seemed to be ordinary, but when the Egyptians did so, the water turned to blood. As usual, they ran to Musa, promising to release the Israelites, but ignored him once their punishment was removed.
فأرسلنا عليهم الطوفان والجراد والقمل والضفادع والدم آيات مفصلات فاستكبروا وكانوا قوما مجرمين.
Despite the clear signs sent by Allah, the Pharaoh and the Egyptians continued to disbelieve. They did not keep their promise of freeing the children of Israel, and instead continued to harass them as they did before. Prophet Musa understood that their arrogance would not allow them to believe.
وقال موسى ربنا إنك آتيت فرعون وملأه زينة وأموالا في الحياة الدنيا ربنا ليضلوا عن سبيلك ربنا اطمس على أموالهم واشدد على قلوبهم فلا يؤمنوا حتى يروا العذاب الأليم قال قد أجيبت دعوتكما فاستقيما ولا تتبعان سبيل الذين لا يعلمون.
Allah then sent inspiration to Moses. Travel by night with my servants. And so, through the darkness of night, Prophet Musa led his followers. By the morning, they reached the Red Sea. As the news of the Israelites' escape reached the Pharaoh, his mind raced with implications. This was far more than a simple loss of labor. It was a direct challenge to his authority and divine status. He urgently summoned his generals, mobilized his army, and led the pursuit after them. As the Israelites neared the edge of the sea, some began to hear a faint but growing sound of horses' hoofs in the distance. Turning their backs, they saw a cloud of dust rising on the horizon. Panic rippled through the crowd. In front of them was a seemingly insurmountable sea. Behind them, the Pharaoh and his soldiers were rapidly advancing. They were trapped, with no apparent way out. We are overtaken for sure, they cried out. Musa reassured them, absolutely not. My Lord is certainly with me. He will guide me. The words only managed to reassure his followers briefly. As the Pharaoh's army advanced, their resolve shattered, and they prepared to surrender themselves back to a life of slavery under the Pharaoh's rule. As the chariots neared closer, Allah commanded Musa, strike the sea with your rod. He did as commanded, and a fierce wind blew across the sea. The water parted in a flash. The waves stood like mountains on either side, allowing Musa and his followers a safe passage to cross through. In a race against time, they proceeded along the seabed. As they came close to crossing to the opposite shore, They glanced back to see Pharaoh's army still relentlessly pursuing them. They were unmoved in the face of Allah's miraculous intervention. People from Musa's nation begged to close the path behind them. However, Allah instructed him to hold back as he had a plan for the tyrant ruler. Pharoah had declared to his army that the sea had parted at his command to pursue the infidels and arrest them. So they rushed through the partition. When they were midway, Allah ordered the sea to return to its former state. Pharoah began panicking with fear in his mind, knowing that his end was near. He cried out, I believe that there is no God but Allah, in whom the children of Israel believe, and I am also one of those who submit to Allah. But his proclamation was insincere and late.
وجاوزنا ببني إسرائيل البحر فأتبعهم فرعون وجنوده بغيا وعدوا حتى إذا أدركه الغرق قال آمنت أنه لا إله إلا الذي آمنت به بنو إسرائيل وأنا من المسلمين الآن وقد عصيت قبل وكنت من المفسدين فاليوم ننجيك ببدنك لتكون لمن خلفك آية وإن كثيرا من الناس عن آياتنا لغافلون.
The waves of the Red Sea drowned the Pharaoh and his army. His corpse washed ashore as a reminder and a sign for the Egyptians and all other disbelievers that the man they worshipped was a mere slave who spread corruption in the land and met his end most tragically.